and Bob Barr in the early 2000s, and just a phenomenal Magic player, known mostly for his limited play.
All right, his opponent this round is Cody Fussell. Cody is actually playing Naya here. And it's
didn't get the memo. I guess.
It's a straight 3-color build of Naya as well. There's no focus on any of the 2. He's all 3.
So what are the cards in the pool that are kind of guiding him down this path? You know, there's got to be some weird allotment of rares or something.
He has a pair of Feet of Resistance. He has a Deflecting Palm. And I think outside of that, the thing that's brought him into this archetype is really just he wants a solid creature curve. He's playing a lot of 2s and 3s in all of the colors. We are underway. Both players just setting up their mana on the early turns here. Mystic Monastery from Neil Reeves.
Now we have Neil's list posted as Obzon, but he has lit off with a Mystic Monastery here. So we may be in 4 or 5 color territory. Now just checking the gold cards here, that usually informs you what someone's doing. There's a Soultide Charm, 2 copies of Obzon Guide, and Obzon Ascendancy. So I guess he is 4 colors most likely.
Yeah. Turn 2 Jeering Instigator was for Neil Reeves. Cody played a Herald of Anafenza on his second turn. He actually looks like he's kept a 1-lander. He didn't hit his second land there. Instigator, surprised to see it just played as a 2/1 for 2 because of its great morph ability.
Well, that to me indicates that Neil has a lot to do with his mana for the next couple of turns. Playing a 2-power 2-drop on the play is very powerful to be doing in this format because the morphs guide so much of the action. And I don't mind keeping 1-landers on the draw on the back of certain powerful cards. Herald of Anafenza may or may not qualify. It's very good, but it is predicated on getting not only to 2, but 3 mana to really become powerful.
Yeah, well, there's the danger that if you get stuck on mana a little bit with a card like Herald of Anafenza, when you do hit turn 3, I would imagine you have a lot of really good cards in your hand that you've been unable to cast. And the question would be, when you hit that turn, do you even want to be outlasting Herald here? Is that better than the other play you might be making?
Well, at this point with Neil leading off with a 2-1, it's pretty attractive to start generating some tokens, but I do agree with your general concern there.
Einok Bondkin was the play for Cody as he did hit his second land. Neil swings with a Morph and the Jeering Instigator, threatening to deal 4 here, and it will be 4 as Cody will go to 15. And a Nomad Outpost here. Neil with excellent mana at this point. You know, I like the Mystic Monastery into Forest Swamp opening.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Neil. We actually grabbed dinner last night, and he said his preferred strategy in Booster Draft in this format is just grab all the goods. Take the lands early, and then just try to take as many powerful cards trying to build a 4 or 5 color deck. No surprise to see him trying to do the same thing in Sealed. He was playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 non-basic lands. 3 of them comes into play tap lands plus the 2 tri-lands that you see here.
Well, when you talk about the goods, these three color cards, what are the goods in Neil's deck?
Well, we'll go through here. He is playing an End Hostilities. Sometimes I wish the seal pools, we have the deck red sheet. If you're not familiar with them, it's sorted by color. Sometimes I wish it was sorted by rarity. So we could get to the goods early on. But he does have a Jeering Instigator. We've already seen that. He has an End Hostilities. He has an Anafenza, an Obzan Ascendancy. And so far he's playing all the rares I see in his pool. Trying to see if I can spot the last few. He has an Acropolis Fiend. So yeah, he's playing at least 5 of his rares. I'll try to see if I can find the 6th one, but he's playing the goods.
Yeah. Neil, that turn swung with his Jeering Instigator and pair of morphs. Cody had missed the land drop again, so he does elect this turn to trade the Herald of Anafenza for the Instigator. Neil, no unmorphs, just plays an unyielding Krumar.
And I think that Cody probably picked the right spot to give up the ghost there. Even if he draws land number 3 this turn, it's unlikely that he can just say, all right, I'll make a token, your turn. So even though that's a painful block to make, I think Cody made the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, one thing that Cody did have going for him is he did outlast that Einok Bondkin last turn, so now he has a 3/2 first strike blocker. It is unclear whether or not that will be able to block these morphs, depending on what they are. Neil will have enough mana to flip them up.
Well, if he was willing to play a Jeering Instigator on turn 2, to me that implies, there's no guarantee, to me that implies that he's got some expensive morphs, because otherwise he would have probably sat on the Jeering Instigator, tried to morph it and use it as a threat somewhere down the line.
For the turn, Cody played Kintree Warden and left up 2 mana to regenerate it this turn, looking like he's just trying to stop some of the bleeding. And Feat of Resistance was the draw for Neil.
And Feat of Resistance now, if Cody gets that Bondkin into combat, this is probably going to be a disaster.
All 3 creatures swinging in again on Neil's side.
Not clear if Neil could have attacked before, but Feat of Resistance makes it really easy to attack now.
Yeah, he's going to block. Cody will block the first morph and put Kintry Warden on the Krumar. And it's an Obzon guide, so Neil can just flip it up here. And that was one of the worries about blocking those morphs with the Bondkin.
Yep.
Cody will pay to regenerate the Kintry Warden, but he's taking 6 and is going to drop to 5. Neil will gain 4 off the Obzon guide.
Yeah, Neil had this kind of rolled up both ways. If it was not a powerful morph, Feat of Resistance had it covered. And of course, if it's one of the ones that unmorph for 5, especially Obzon guide, then, well, that takes care of itself.
And Highland Game is the play for Fussell. This does gain him 2 life, but it's a death trigger. We don't know if he'll actually have that chance.
Sometimes games of limited are as simple as just count up the numbers that are in play on both sides of the table. Who's got the edge right now? Is it 2-1-1-1 guys or 3-3-4-4-2-2 possibly larger guy?
2 creatures swinging again here from Reeves. He's going to leave the morph back at home this time. And Fussell doesn't have a good block here. Even all his double blocks are no good.
This is a mess. There's no 2 ways about it here.
And the first strike on unyielding Krumar means that he can't be double blocked. So Cody will just let the Krumar through. He's going to block Kintry Warden to the Obzon guide, take 3, and regenerate. And the draw for Neil, he's going to play a morph. It looks like he has a Rakshasa's Secret. Now that's a Mind Rot style effect. If this format really is 5-color and slow, then that kind of effect stands to be pretty good.
Especially if you have any Delve synergies too. Works very nicely there. It's a card that I found myself cutting more often than not in draft. Just because kind of low impact and some of the decks are pretty fast, but in sealed, I think it's much better suited for the pace of the game.
And we are back onto Fussell's turn. Neil did play another morph there. Highland Game will swing. Neil at a healthy 28. Can't imagine he'll be blocking here.
Yep. Give him a piece of your mind. I like it. If you're going to lose, you might as well at least deal 2, you know?
Absolutely. It looks like it'll be Hordling Outburst for Fussell. That'll buy him a few more turns as it makes 3 1/1 goblins. Hordling Outburst, a card I actually have been very happy with in both draft and sealed.
I think that you need the synergies to make it good. I think outside, if you're not playing things like Trumpet Blast or what have you, I think it's pretty low impact. There's just so many 2-2s and 3-3s and 4-4s floating around on the table because of Morph that I would rather make one large creature than several small ones, but there are some synergies that make this card really good.
Swing here from Reeves. This one's going to be a swing of the entire team. And we'll see what the blocks are. Cody is at 6. Yeah, the synergies with the Hordlings, Rush of Battle and Trumpet Blast are generally the 2 go-to commons here.
Yep.
Morph is double blocked by creatures. Neil's going to check it.
I believe that's a Pine Walker.
I believe so as well. Pine Walker, one of the better creatures you can unmorph in this set. One's a Pine Walker. The other one may be a Woolly Loxodon. But Pine Walker will be unmorphed here, and that's the unblocked Pine Walker. And that will do it. Game 1 goes to Neil Reeves.
Yeah, Cody there keeping a speculative hand. And I think that's basically the way that Neil wants to execute this format of, you know, play all the mana fixers, play all your powerful stuff, and be conscious of your curve. Don't allow yourself to fall behind too far. Use your morphs to allow you to have plays in the early game, and then somewhere down the line you start turning over your 5 and 6 mana cards that, you know, you're unmorphs for 5 or 6, and the rest takes care of itself.
What I liked about how Neil's game plan worked there is Cody stumbled a bit, and that was pretty unfortunate, but even once Cody started hitting his lands, it didn't feel like his cards really mattered because Neil's cards were such high impact. Cody could play blockers. He did start playing something a turn, but Neil was just consistently going over the top of whatever Cody was making.
For example, Neil is playing Venerable Lamasu in his list. This is a card where in Booster Draft it's a little sketchy. I don't think every single person would necessarily want to play in sealed, but Neil's take on the format is just be slow and powerful. He's playing the full 5 colors, even though his deck is at its core Obzon. His basic lands are just forest, plains, and swamps. The rest are being facilitated by splashes from his non-basic lands. He is trying to just do the biggest, baddest stuff. And when I was talking to him yesterday, it sounded like that was his interpretation on the format. So I'm sure he's pretty happy with the sealed deck that he got.
Yeah, if you look at Cody's side, he has gone for a very different outlook on the format. He's playing 3-color aggro, and he has some mana fixing for it. But if you look at the strategy here, he has 2 Highland Game, an Heir of the Wilds, an Einok Bondkin. These are all 2-drops, by the way. And has gone even for some of the more aggressive 3-drops, cards like Bloodfire Expert, which is a 3/1 for 3. And then he's playing a copy of Trumpet Blast to finish all this off.
Okay, so this is a very unorthodox seal pool. We do not see this build. I think this will probably be the only time we have Naya on camera today, would be my guess.
Yeah, I think it looks like he chose Naya based on the creature curve, would be my outlook on it. It's certainly, of the colors he has the lowest end of creatures that you can find in the pool.
So the unfortunate consequence of this is that you don't get to play very many gold cards, and the only one in Cody's list is a Deflecting Pain.
Right, he has one. He didn't open too many gold cards, it looks like, in the first place. And sometimes, and this is a strategy that you can do in sealed, when you just don't open powerful cards, these big 6 and 7 late game ending things, then one of the things you can do is try to draft a very aggressive, consistent curve and really challenge your opponent to make their land drops and make their color drops.
Listen, if you can't win long, you gotta win short. You gotta pick a path, right? So when your pools are short on power, which it seems like Cody's absolutely was, well, 2-drop into 3-drop into 4-drop into Trumpet Blast. If your opponent's stumbling on mana or fumbling around with Morse for too long, that might be enough to steal some games.
Absolutely. We'll see if he'll be able to do it this next game here. If he hits things on the play, I do think he stands a chance of hitting Neil before Neil can get his cards going.
And Herald of Anafenza is an extremely powerful enabler for this sort of strategy. If you had to pick a rare, assuming I had to tell you you had to play a Naya beatdown deck with a bunch of 2s and 3s, Herald of Anafenza may be on the top of your list. So he's at least got that going for him, though.
Yeah, Herald is great. There are a few of these token aggressive style rares. So Jeering Instigator, Herald of Anafenza, Master of Pearls. These are all things I think I would want in the curve you out style sealed pool.
Yeah, Master of Pearls being perhaps the top of the list.
I think that would be the top one for me. Though Herald of Anafenza is quite good.
Yes. If Cody hits his land drops on time there, it's possible we're looking at a very different game. Though Neil did have a lot of just 4/4s and, he was equipped to slog through tokens, but hard to underestimate Herald of Anafenza. That card's very, very potent.
Yeah, and Cody's really put a premium on creatures in his deck. He did have the opportunity to play more removal spells. He has cards like Bring Low and Arrowstorm, both which have been left in his sideboard so that he could play more creatures. Cards like Summit Prowler, which is a 4/3 for 4. He's preferring to top his curve with bigger creatures as opposed to tricks and removal.
Though, even if that was your strategy, I think removing Bring Low is a stretch for me.
Yeah, that card's pretty decent. I think it's one of Red's better removal spells at common.
Particularly because so many of the seal pools bias themselves towards Obzon, you're often taking down big stuff with tokens on it, which is really sweet.
What are your thoughts on a card like Arrowstorm then in sealed? It's 4 damage for 5 mana, maybe 5 damage if you have Ferocious. I don't think Cody will have Ferocious very often, but 4 damage for 5 mana, but it can go to the player.
I think that's sort of the tipping point of, if you have basically a theme deck, which is what Cody's up to here, maybe that card's low enough impact that you would consider cutting it. But I think that Bring Low is just too efficient to pass up.
We are underway. Cody has chosen to be on the play for game 2. So he starts, looks like, just on a pair of basics. And there's a lot of pressure on him to have a 2-drop on turn 2 and 3-on-3, I'd say, as well.
Not only because his deck is so aggressive, but Neil is going to be gaining a fair amount of life incidentally off of these comes into play tap lands.
Yeah. Einok Bondkin was the 2-drop for Cody. No 2-drop for Neil. But yeah, the life gain actually off the tap lands isn't irrelevant. I would say most players will end up starting the game at 23, if you factor in their drops from the entirety of the game.
Yeah, it makes it even more of an uphill battle to try to beat down in the format because your opponent's incidentally gaining a fair amount of life along the way.
Yeah, Einok Bondkin swung for 2. It was followed up by Teamer Charger. This is one of the cycle of free reveal morphs. He decided to play it unmorphed just as a 3/1.
To me, probably indicates he does not have a green card in his hand, although it appears that he does. It's sort of free to just...
If you have a green card on 3 and you don't have anything to do with that 3rd mana, I would assume you'd play it face down.
What are the 1 white cards he could hypothetically... I mean, I guess Defiant Strike he could have in his hand, but that's not something he could see himself casting this turn, most likely.
Yeah, one of the things he's played out of the board is it looks like he has boarded in a Rush of Battle here for this matchup. Neil Reeves played a morph on turn 3, passes back. Fourth land we'll see. I imagine, given the opportunity, Neil will simply trade away his morphs with Cody's early drops.
Though the threat of Dragon Scale Boon makes it very dangerous to block against an opponent with 4 mana. Neil may have to because his deck's much slower. He can only fall behind on the board so much, but when your opponent's on the play and you play a morph on 3, that's one of the cards you're fearing the most if you're thinking about making a block.
Yeah, Dragon Scale Boon. I don't think Cody has it in his hand, but that certainly when you're on the aggro plan, it's one of the most potent tricks in the format. The Einok Bondkin will outlast, and Cody will pass. No attack from Teamer Charger there. Looks like he's trying to build up toward a good board to cast Rush of Battle on. The remaining cards in his hand, he has a Kill Shot, a land, and actually he's boarded in Woolly Loxodon for this matchup, trying to match some of Neil's fat with his own.
Well, and Kill Shot is another incentive for Cody to just kind of allow for the game to get to the spot where it's attractive for Neil to attack. If Cody's just attacking and Neil's blocking and trading the whole time, or if that's Neil's game plan, then that Kill Shot is going to be really ineffective. But if Cody allows the game to drag out, maybe Neil finds some large creature that he can start pressuring Cody with while holding the fort with the rest of his blockers, and then Kill Shot can be very powerful.
All right, Cody, this time he's going to swing into some untapped mana here. Swings with Teamer Charger, and Neil flips the DC's pet to block it.
When R&D said they were 5 mana is the flashpoint for when morphs start to get the other stuff, they weren't talking about 2 1s and 3 1s. So that's about the best of DC's pet you're going to see in this format right there.
Yeah, huge block there. Sidisi's Pet is interesting in that it's one of the morph. There's a small subset of morph cards that can unmorph for 2 or fewer mana. And Sidisi's Pet is one of them. And you always have to have that card in the back of your mind, I think, when playing against a black morph deck.
I mean, that was brutal.
If you ever get to put a 1/4 in front of a 3/1, you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Neil got to make that play with Feet of Resistance up at the same time. And now he'll gain life on his own. He's going to swing with the Sidisi's Pet. So he looks like he's drawn his copy of Necropolis Fiend. A ways away from it, but he does have the finisher, which he just needs to survive up to. Land number 5, and that will be Pine Walker.
Good face down and good face up.
I have been surprised at how often I have just wanted to play that guy face up. A 5/5 for 5 carries a lot of size in this format.
He is the ultimate 2 good deals right here.
6th land from Cody.
I often describe cards sarcastically that way. Rubble Belt Maka, for example, but
yeah,
Pine Walker is actually 2 good deals.
Cody swings both creatures. Neil's tapped out here. No blocks, and that's going to be Woolly Loxodon for Cody. So a huge hit. And that's going to be for 7, or for 9. It's 6 from the Woolly Loxodon, and then 3 more from Einok Bondkin. Dropping Neil to 9, he has to be a little careful here.
Even the lower impact morphs, the expensive ones, when you get to spots like this, man, they are,
They're big.
They're about as good as any rare, Look at that thing. It's
got some big numbers on it.
Yeah, it's got some really big numbers,
End Hostilities was the draw for Reeves. We'll see if he wants to sit on that one for a bit, maybe try to chump.
Yeah, I think Neil can sit back on defense one more turn, probably induce a little bit more action.
Yeah, he also has what looks to be an Obzon Ascendancy in his hand, so he could pull off the combo of casting his own Obzon Ascendancy and then casting End Hostilities. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know what Obzon Ascendancy does, it's It's supposed to, I would have thought about it in constructed as a way to ensure yourself from your opponent's sweeper. However, we might see Neil play his own sweeper into this.
And this is, this board, it seems like it's almost impossible for it to not get a spot where Cody gets destroyed by end hostilities, which is what we saw in the last game. And just like the last game also, Neil is making enough of an effort to play to the board where it's hard to identify end hostilities being set up. So far, nothing's out of the ordinary.
Or we have Rush of Battle. That's going to be on Cody's side. Wooly Loxodon gets all the way up to an 8/8 off this one. Don't believe either of these are warriors, so it's just a +2/+1. And swing from Bondkin and Wooly Loxodon.
The Bondkin is a soldier, in fact.
Yeah.
Which is curious in a set with warriors because that distinction is pretty subtle.
There are a lot of creatures that I would have thought would be warriors. I remember playing with Valley Dasher and then being like, wait, he's a berserker. It's like, bro, that's really close to a warrior, but isn't.
I was working for a different product where we had a robots matter theme in a set, and one of the creatures was randomly a cyborg. It's like, this is cyborgs and robots are pretty close, you know, in the scheme of things.
Yeah. Pinewalker's gonna eat the Bondkin. Wooly Loxodon will eat away the Sidisi's pet. Neil's gonna gain 2 life, and I presume get a token off his Abzan Ascendancy. And here's the danger. Cody doesn't really have a good attack here. Coming up, Neil doesn't have to cast the end hostilities even.
No, he's not even, he can, that's the panic button here. Yeah. Neil is arguably ahead on the board, and he has a Feat of Resistance in his hand too, so no real rush to do anything.
He doesn't have the second black yet, but his draw for the turn was Rite of the Serpent. That's your 6 mana unconditional kill spell from the set. Won't be able to cast it just
Shades
yet.
of Sip of Hemlock from the previous block.
Exactly.
Not ideal, but functional. Probably better in this format because, again, pace of the game's a little bit slower. It's a lot of battleship magic where, you know, the biggest things matter. So 6 mana removal spells, they're not splashy, they're not sexy, but they're good enough.
It's common for your opponent to invest a lot of mana in their creature. If you look at something like Wooly Loxodon, Cody has put 9 mana into that this game. So when you're casting 6 mana to kill it, that's actually an exchange you're pretty okay with.
Yeah.
Morph was the play for Neil. So we pass back over to Cody. Right now, Cody at a healthy 27 life, but behind on the board. He just has a Wooly Loxodon. Neil is at 11. Cody's going to try to falter its way through, casting Feat of Resistance on Wooly Loxodon, 1/1 counter, and pro green. It does give Neil the option to chump with this Morph if he wants to.
Which I imagine Neil's going to do. His hand's so powerful that it feels like the only thing that can really go wrong in this game is he takes some random pot shots he doesn't need to.
Yeah, it looks like he wants to save the Morph. He's going to respond with the Feat of Resistance of his own. That'll give his Morph a 1/1 counter, and pro green. 2 creatures will just bounce off each other.
So that's an even better spot.
Yeah. Land from Cody puts him up to 28 and passes back. Yeah, Neil is at 11. That's not too low, but when your opponent has a 7-power creature, it's not unreasonable. And Sultai Charm is the draw for Neil. He does have the mana to cast it. Loxodon sure is monocolored.
And now with that Feat of Resistance out of the way, I think Neil can pretty comfortably just cast this.
We're going to see that. Sultai Charm to take care of the Wooly Loxodon. Leaves Cody with an empty board and 1 card in his hand. It's a kill shot. Team will swing here from Neil. And kill shot will take down the Pinewalker. But that's the last of Cody's cards as he takes 4 here. Neil still has 5 powers of creature in play, an Ascendancy, a hand with multiple kill spells. And that 24 is going to go down really fast.
Yeah, and hostility is among them, so he's got an incredible insurance policy in case things go awry. And Neil just very skillfully navigating this game.
And he's got his own Wooly Loxodon here. That's what the Morph was. So what looked like it was going to be a swing for 5 turns into a swing for 9. Now this is a 3-turn clock. Cody's down to 15.
If you could have drawn up a game to describe the way that Neil was just talking about the format to me last night, this would be it right here. It's all power, It's using your morph set, both to shore up the early game and to give you power to take over later on in the game, playing all of your powerful rares. And Neil in the driver's seat with a ton left over. I mean, he's got 4 spells left over in his hand at this point.
Yeah, Summit Prowler from Cody, and that's just going to chump the Woolly Loxodon. So buys him a turn, but doesn't help him at all on the board as he still is on 0 cards.
And Neil may be so far ahead that he may choose to play around the possibility of end hostilities in Cody's deck. For example, just not deploy the Necropolis Feed and have that as the leftovers.
Yeah, Neil casting 1 more creature there, but that's going to be good enough. Cody extends the hand, and 2 games to 0. Neil Reeves moves to 2-0.
There you have it. I mean, that was it right there. Exactly what Neil wants to do to a T, and you got to see exactly why he believes it's so powerful.
Yeah, Cody was going for an aggressive plan there. As you saw, he did get to start the game on Einok Bondkin into Teamer Charger, but Neil was able to shore up the attack and still be at 19 life when he'd done so. And that to me seemed really where the story was at. Cody really wasn't close to pushing enough damage to get Neil scared.
You could see that Cody there at the end of the game showed the deflecting palm in his deck, and I think probably describing why he tried to feed a resistance his Loxodon and try to get in that 1 hit, because then if he draws deflecting palm, he might be able to steal the game. But Neil was just able to, he was willing to chump block, I'm willing to bet, and it was even better than that because he had fatal resistance to protect his creature, and so Cody never really got him into any sort of dangerous range.
Yeah, there is a lot of danger, even in racing though. Cards like Obzon Guide, which Cody knew was in Neil's deck, can even mess up that strategy. So there's a lot of things that would have had to have fallen Cody's way.
For sure, but this is, again, it's, Cody's seal pool, by the looks of things, is trying to make lemonade out of lemons. I mean, there's no gold cards. It's obviously low on power. And all he's trying to do here is cobble together the most aggressive curve of creatures he can and hope that his deflecting palm, his trumpet blast, whatever the case may be, may give him enough to close out the game. But Neil was able to just shore up the ground way too early, and then Cody's much